So oh,
Yeah, because they have prep time. So it's exactly. There's students in here about this meeting. So I've seen several times. say which question?
No, it is in the speech.
Yeah. That's what they've been doing.
It's a speech.
This is the studio theater that had so. Yes. Look, I hope this show. Yes, we're good. Sorry, tell me your name.
My name's Akshay. Yes, in a world where we think of liberty and freedom as a driving factor to our beliefs, a democracy, a belief, a trend that should never wither away. These are things we like to believe. But when we look at the reality, we look at democracy, and what we see is a withering flower, a flower that's crumbling in our hands and slowly dying away, with the insides and the ends of the flower grasping for that little life that it has left. Democracy is dying. So when the question that we ask is, does the phrase democracy in peril accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? I believe that that is in fact true. That democracy in peril is the portal, is the headlines for the way democracy is behaving today and the way we see democratic forces rise today. Now, since the Second World War, democracy has seamlessly had forward momentum. However, when the driving force of democracy goes silent, it is the autocrats who are now triumphing. A 6 September foreign policy article quotes global political momentum is decisively shifting to autocracies that are actively trying to shape their regions, like cynical and vicious dictatorships such as Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and China that are seamlessly mobilizing power. But the problem isn't with countries like Saudi Arabia or China or North Korea who are established democracies. But the problem, oh, sorry, established autocracies. But the problem is with democracies that are slowly turning into autocracies. And the best example of that is Russia. The problem we see is centralized power and authoritative decisions in what was known to be an established democracy post-Soviet era. A 30th August BBC article quotes hundreds of young people have been detained during summer demonstrations in a wave of anger after opposition candidates in parliamentary candidates were barred from running in Moscow's parliamentary elections. This shows centralized power. This shows abuse of centralized power and authoritative decision making. That when protesters were incarcerated and detained for protesting against what an autocratic belief and pushing for democracy, that their own beliefs were disemboweled. A June, July, and August edition of Foreign Affairs states democracies have been expiring in big strategically important countries. Mr. Putin, for example, has long been using the power granted to him through elections to destroy democracy in Russia. And we're seeing a perfect example of this. Mr. Putin is abusing power, centralized power, need I remind you, centralized power, and he is making authoritative decisions in what is known as a democratic country. That flower is withering now. The flower of democracy is slowly withering, and democracy is also like a matchstick that's slowly burning out. My next point is that democracy is also burning out because of the rigging of elections and the complete the rigging of elections and the complete elimination of voter confidence. And this is best seen through a 30th October Washington Post poll stating Evo Morales ran for a fourth consecutive term as Bolivia's president. However, Bolivia's constitution limits presidents to 2 terms in office, and despite losing a referendum to legalize his fourth term, He has the key right to run. This shows that Evo Morales, a democratic leader, is now manipulating facts, manipulating the elections, and has now lost voter confidence, but still manages to stay in office. That is not democracy, that is autocracy. The same article quotes the president's attempt to stay in power revealed his autocratic temptations. This also shows that Evo Morales, who is known to be a democratic leader, is slowly shifting towards being an autocratic leader. That autocracy is rising as democracy is withering. It is democracy that is in danger, and it is autocracy that is slowly rising like a king, aggrandizing to power from the young age. And that burning mastic, that withering flower, we're seeing it every day. As we saw with Russia and as we saw with Bolivia. Two well established democracies managing to wither out and turn into what is known as an autocracy. We have established autocracies, but those countries haven't withered away from an autocracy to a democracy. But we have democracies turning into autocracies. And that is not the trend we should be following. That is not the underlying trend. And when we see the trend, the exact opposite of this trend being followed, we really question whether or not democracy is in danger. And when we question whether or not democracy is in danger, we tend to headline it as democracy in peril.
Sorry, you say your name first.
So that the new birth, the new birth. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Could you give your name one more time?
Siddharth Shankar. So sorry. The new birth of freedom. This was a message given to us by President Abraham Lincoln, a former US president who was a very integral part of founding democracy for the US. And democracy, it's a form of government that a lot of countries use in today's world. It's a form of government that allows the people to assume the word freedom. The slogan for democracy is for the people, by the people, of the people. However, recently democracy is diminishing, and the power of it is being used in the wrong way. This leads me all to my question. Does the phrase democracy in peril accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? I would argue, yes, democracy in peril is a very solid way of showing what the current state of democracy is today. One, because of China's autocratic regime. Two, because of President Trump's actions. And three, countries in South America losing their democracy. Now one, China. China is an autocratic regime and a powerful one at that. It is it's one of the largest countries in the world, and we consider it a powerhouse. China is a powerful regime, hell-bent on taking down democracy, and this can be seen in Hong Kong. In an article posted by Foreign Affairs on the 8th of September, titled A World Safe Autocracy, a quote from this article states, China is engaged in a life and death attempt to defeat democracy. Another quote from this article states, the Chinese dream. The Chinese dream refers to President Xi Jinping's idea of what a country should be and what the form of governance should be. In a 9th of October article by Washington Post, China lashes out at Western companies for Hong Kong. A quote from this article states, they want to control what the people think and what the people see. Now, this they is China, and what the people see is the support of Hong Kong from Western companies. However, both of these articles go to prove that China is not only hell bent on taking away Hong Kong's freedom, but also that they're trying to take down democracy and is trying to set a new trail, or rather a new idea all around the world, which is autocracy. Second, US's actions. Now, what I mean by US's actions are the inquiry into Joe Biden, the silence in the protests in the Middle East, and silence in Hong Kong. In an article posted on Foreign Policy on the 25th of October, Trump is using Chinese Communist Party tactics to smear Biden. A quote from this article states, China should investigate his former political rival, Joe Biden. Now, this quote goes to prove that Trump is using the power of the US for his re-election campaign, which is not what the US was founded on. However, there is a more pressing issue concerning the US: the silence on the protests in the Middle East and the silence in Hong Kong. In an article posted on the 1st of November by Foreign Policy saying Trump's stand with the Middle Eastern leaders, not with the people. This article talks about how Trump has flat out stated that he doesn't really care what is happening about the protests in the Middle East, which is a big issue because it's spreading all around the Middle East into different countries. However, there is one more problem: the silence in Hong Kong. In an article posted by CNN on the 4th of October, titled Trump promised she silence on Hong Kong. A quote from this article states, this is a dramatic departure from decades of US support for human rights. Now, this quote alone goes to prove how the US has changed from a pro-democratic country to a country that favors economic gain rather than the safety of democracy. President Trump is trying to make sure that trade deals with China go through and not supporting the Hong Kong. And last, countries in South America. South America is a continent which has a lot of democratic issues. But recently, two countries have stood out: the country of Bolivia and the country of Cambodia. Bolivia is facing a big issue with the president Evo Morales, who's negating the constitutional order of the president. In an article posted by the Washington Post on October 30th, titled Bolivia's Democracy Major. This article is talking about Evo Morales, which just speaks for everybody in Bolivia, which threatens Bolivia's constitutional order. Evo Morales has been president for more than 2 terms, which is against the current order in Bolivia and Cambodia. In an article posted by Washington Post on the 20th of October, Cambodia Hun Sun wants democracy without competition. Hun Sun is an autocratic leader saying that he wants democracy and trying to downplay an actual democratic leader running for elections, Sam. This goes to prove that countries in South America are facing difficulty with democracy. So, in conclusion, I believe democracy is in peril due to the China's autocratic regime, US's actions, and the countries in South America facing democratic issues.
Yeah, they stay here. They don't go anywhere. They stay here. They don't. Okay, guys. Somebody's up here.
In the United States Constitution, the First Amendment guarantees 5 rights, 5 freedoms: religion, association, press, petition, and speech. These are synonymous with democracy in my eyes, and in many countries around the world, these rights are being infringed. Some examples of this are in Hong Kong, where the Chinese government is shutting down protests, and this is actually happening in a lot of countries around the world, in Iraq, in Chile, in Spain. All these instances of governments and powers imposing themselves on the freedom of the people begs the question, does the increased power and influence of autocratic regimes such as China pose the greatest threat to democratic governance? To which I must emphatically say, yes, indeed it does. This is because of the example of what China is doing in Hong Kong, what Turkey has done to the Kurds, and somewhat the situation in Kashmir as well as the corruption in the government which is being exposed through protests around the world. To elaborate on my first point of Hong Kong, Hong Kong was supposed to be free until the year 2047. This was a foreign policy article published on August 17th. This is a time that was 50 years after they were handed over back to the Chinese government from the British government. There was supposed to be a 50-year interval. However, we've seen with the recent controversial extradition law that this has exposed the fact that China has much more of an influence in Hong Kong than we may have been led to believe. A BBC article from October 4th says that the Hong Kong government has banned face masks of protesters, which they have donned in order to combat the tear gas which has been used against them. Further articles from the BBC on October 11th and October 13th cite violence, use of petrol bombs against police, and water cannons being used against the public. It's funny to look at these images in a way that's really upsetting because you see the protesters, and they're there with their gas masks and their civilian clothes. And the police honestly look like people out of Halo or out of Call of Duty. They have all this military gear and all this protection, and they're attacking protesters simply because they've been told to, because the Hong Kong government there is a puppet of China. Secondly, we see in Turkey what they've done to the Kurdish people, and also somewhat the situation in Kashmir. These are two somewhat similar instances around in different parts of the globe. An Al Jazeera report from October 23rd says that Turkey's goal in invading northern Syria was to fight back against the Kurds, who they deemed to be terrorists. Indeed, the Indian government, according to a CNN article published on September 27th, says that there are many terrorists in Kashmir province as well. While this is true, they have overstated the fact that all Muslims are terrorists, and they're generalizing in their use of the word terrorist. Going back to talking more about Kashmir, a BBC article published on the 31st of October cites how the Indian government revoked Article 370, which guaranteed Kashmir semi-autonomy. This is the Indian government who is infringing upon the democratic freedoms of Kashmir, who really have not had these democratic freedoms to begin with. Freedom is necessary for democracy, as you can't have a democracy without freedom. My third point is the corruption in the governments that is being exposed to the protests around the world. The BBC article on October 25th cites Francisco Anguitar, a protester in Chile, as saying that the three main causes for the protests are they demand justice, honesty, and ethics from their government. This means that the government there is not providing, does not have these things, and this is a threat to democracy. The foreign policy article from October 25th says that a majority of Iranians fear Trump. This paranoia is one example of how they fear their democracy may be infringed upon in the freedom. If we see another example of the United States foreign policy causing them to move troops or have greater involvement in the Middle East. A BBC article from October 26th cites clashes. There were 5 people dead in one day in Iraq in the protests there in Baghdad, and 150 total since the beginning. I'm going to say that these are the most dangerous and deadly instances since ISIS was declared dead in northern Iraq in 2017. The protesters demand that the government must resign. However, the government does not see this, and the government is fighting back. It is clear and evident that democracy and freedom is under attack for the reasons of China's influence in Hong Kong, the infringements by governments on the rights and freedoms of people of the Kurds and the people in Kashmir, and the corrupt governments that are cracking down on protesters, the use of violence in many countries around the globe, such as Chile, Argentina, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, and many more. In politics, influence is everything. If you have influence, then power will surely follow. It is because of the reasons stated above that the increasing power and influence of autocratic regimes, such as China, poses the greatest threat to democratic governance. In the early 1800s, the slaves in Haiti fought to free themselves from a tyrannical government that was the French. We let the freedom of the first democracy that was established in the modern world, we let those freedoms come to an end, or will we ourselves fight back against the injustice and infringement upon democracy and freedoms? Thank you.
A good day for the good guys. This quote was said by the Turkish government right after the Turkish government's intelligence forces, as well as the US, managed to track down and kill Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the former leader of ISIS. However, isn't it kind of ironic that Turkey is referring to themselves as well as the US as the good guys? Because who are the good guys? Are the good guys the ones who pull out US troops from Syria in times where Syria needed them the most? Are the good guys the ones? Are the good guys the ones who constantly attack the Kurdish people of Syria? For 5 years, U.S. policy has relied on working with Kurdish forces to fight the Islamic State and limit influence of Iran and Russia to maintain leverage over any possibility of conflict. However, clearly the U.S. has failed to do so after pulling the troops out of Syria, giving Bashar al-Assad and his Iranian and Russian allies a free hand. This all leads to the question, does the phrase democracy in peril accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? And which my answer is yes, due to the reasons that the abandonment of democracy has led to the possibility of the return of ISIS. Secondly, the worsening relations between nations. And thirdly, the increase of dysfunction amongst democracies. Firstly, the abandonment of democracy that has led to the possibility of the return of ISIS. In an article published by the New York Times on October 13th, it stated that due to the betrayal of the US on Syria, the Kurds have been left at the mercy of the Turkish. Now it's important to keep in mind the times in which ISIS has been able to emerge and show their power. This happened in Iraq when they managed to take over an entire city. This also happened in Syria when they managed to show their power at a time where Syria was most vulnerable. Ever since Turkey has been attacking the Kurds, ISIS has claimed responsibility for 2 attacks in Syria, which were two car bombs in northern Syria. Also, due to the Turkish attacks, ISIS detainees have managed to escape from Kurdish prisons in Syria, making the return of ISIS very likely. And even if it's not ISIS, it could result in the return of something bigger than ISIS. For example, before ISIS was around, it was Al-Qaeda. But after the fall of Al-Qaeda, ISIS was able to emerge with the leftover powers of Al-Qaeda, meaning that an organization worse than ISIS could emerge. Secondly, worsening relations between nations. Clearly, the US's abandonment of democratic ideals has led to bad relations with Syria. However, the US has even managed to worsen relations through the trade war with China, as well as with Yemen and Iran, through endorsing Saudi Arabia's actions of retaliation after two of their oil fields were attacked. But how can their nations solve conflict with constant use of hard power and aggression? On the other hand, in an article published by the Indian Times on October 2nd, it stated that Saudi Arabia has endorsed India's actions on Kashmir, which isn't a surprise considering the fact that both nations are tempted to wipe out entire populations. But to worsen the situation, Trump has agreed with Saudi Arabia's endorsement and their approval of India's actions on Kashmir, further proving how the democratic state is indeed in peril. Thirdly, the increase of dysfunction amongst democracies. In a foreign policy article published on September 6th, it stated that there is a sense of displacement, dislocation, and despair amongst Americans who feel that the democratic system has let them down. Mature democracies, such as the US, are falling into corruption and fighting in all the wrong ways against growing external threats. Now, the whole point of the Cold War was to ensure the spread of democratic governments in order to stabilize global foreign policy. But history is repeating itself, and the engagement history is repeating itself. The world is falling back. How can the world's largest democracy engage in illegal activity that has led to the impeachment decree of President Trump, in which him and his lawyer Giuliani have accused the whistleblower of being a spy for simply doing his job? How can we trust democracy to lead the world to the right directions when clearly the biggest democracy is going in the complete opposite direction? In conclusion, the question was, does the phrase democracy in peril accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? In which my answer was yes, due to the reasons that the abandonment of democracy has led to the possibility of the return of ISIS. Secondly, the worsening relations between nations. And thirdly, the increase of dysfunction amongst democracies.
The yearning for liberty dwells in all of our hearts. The desire to be free and for justice to prevail lies in all of us. Yet it is the definition of true evil for good people to stand by and do nothing when democracy dies in darkness. The question before us today is, does the phrase democracy in peril accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? And unequivocally, the answer to this question is yes. Yes, for democratic governance suffers throughout the world. And that's for three reasons. The bastions of democracy and liberal values in the United States and Great Britain are both under threat. In the United States, you see the President Donald Trump threaten the democratic institutions that exemplify America. And across the pond, in Great Britain, for my second point, we see Prime Minister Boris Johnson as he threatens the democratic institutions that build Great Britain. These great bastions of liberty and justice. And for my third point, I will talk about Hong Kong and how the cries for freedom and democracy go unheard over there. And how these people who desire to be free have no help from the rest of the world. And democracy dies over there as well. For my first point, related to the United States of America and President Donald Trump's despicable behavior in that country. According to a foreign policy article dated October 25th, President Donald Trump has doubled down on a political tactic that strains the limits of credibility, publicly demanding that foreign powers help him win in the 2020 US presidential election by investigating his political rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, over his son Hunter Biden's business dealings. This is in reference to the recent scandal in which President Donald Trump asked his Ukrainian counterpart to investigate Hunter Biden, the son of his political rival Joe Biden, in Ukraine. This is an example of corruption and wrongdoing and how democracy is under threat. Because there is no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the Bidens, yet President Donald Trump uses his position as head of state of the most powerful country in the world to take down his rival in the United States. According to another article dated October 9th by CNN, Trump will do anything to get elected, including violating the most basic forms of democracy. It's stunning and it's dangerous. No president in history has dared to engage in such unimaginable behavior. We see America as an exemplar of democracy and freedom and justice and all of these great values that we aspire for. Yet today we see that the president, the leader of this free country, engages in the most corrupt and despicable form of behavior. A true blow towards democratic governance all across the world. For my second point, I will talk about similar occurrences in the United Kingdom, another country, a bastion for democracy, where democracy used to thrive until Prime Minister Boris Johnson. According to a Washington Post article dated August 30th, protesters massed outside 10 Downing Street and in cities across the country, decrying Johnson's controversial decision to suspend Parliament as a coup. According to a BBC article dated August 24th, Mr. Johnson suspended or prorogued Parliament for 5 weeks earlier this month. But the court said it was wrong to stop Parliament carrying out its duties in the run-up to the Brexit deadline. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the chief executive of the United Kingdom, overstepped his boundaries and tried to dictate to the legislature what his rightful duties were. He tried to push through a no-deal Brexit without this being the will of the masses and of the people. An undemocratic move at its finest. Yet another example of democratic governance today being under threat. And for my third point, I will speak to the current pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong and how they are unheard by the rest of the world. How these pro-democracy protesters are ignored and looked down upon, and how the futility of this movement shows us the state of democratic governance today. According to a CNN article dated October 4th, during a private phone call in June, President Donald Trump promised Chinese President Xi Jinping that the US would remain quiet on pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong while trade talks continue. We see Hong Kong protesters receiving no help from any other country, no other president, no other people. This is extremely worrying. According to a BBC article dated September 8th, pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong are appealing to President Donald Trump for help as they march with the US consulate general in the city to no avail. If we allow these occurrences to happen across the world and don't stand up for what is right, democracy will die. It is under threat, and unless something is done by good people, democracy will die across the world. This is the answer to the question today, which is: does the phrase "democracy in peril" accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? And the answer to that is yes. We should hear the people of Hong Kong, the people of Great Britain, the United States, countries across the world, chafing under the chains of oppression and tyranny, of seeing utter wrongdoing in their leaders and in their forms of governments. We must hear their cries and stand beside them in solidarity for what is right and what is just, for what we all want, for liberty and for democracy. Thank you.
Close the doors, please. No, you cannot come in. Now we have one left and
Good afternoon, may I begin? Growing up, as a child in the United States of America, while Mr. Barack Obama was our president, I used to think I was a huge fan of democracy. And I had a very basic concept of what it was. But I thought that there would be no other way that could be as efficient as democracy. But in recent times, have the tables turned? Which leads me to the question, does the phrase democracy in peril accurately exemplify the state of democratic governance today? I believe that it does because social media has too much influence on democratic affairs. Not everybody in some countries can vote, and corruption and breaking news is present in some countries as well. Firstly, social media has too much influence. According to the October 1st CNN article, Democratic National Committee slams Facebook for letting Trump mislead Americans unattended. The Trump campaign has spent around $20 million on Facebook ads since May 2018. And Facebook's policy can allow Mr. Trump to share misinformation, which shows how American citizens are being misguided just because they are using social media. Now, on the other hand, there's Twitter. According to the October 31st BBC article, Twitter to ban all political advertising. Twitter claims the reach of these messages should be earned, not bought. I believe that Twitter is right. Look at the amount of people who go on social media every day just to check their friends' posts or their favorite celebrities' posts. I go on Instagram a lot. What if an Instagram ad comes about Donald Trump? What if I'm misled by that? It's undemocratic and is a reason of why democracy isn't present. Secondly, not everybody in some countries can vote. According to the October 22nd article published by Foreign Policy, titled Not Everyone Has a Vote in the World's Largest Democracy, 120 million people last May could not vote in India because of discrimination, such as they were from like lower castes, such as the Dalit caste, or they were from another religion, such as they were Muslim. This shows that democracy is being run by discrimination in some countries, and that must not be continued. And which leads me to my final point. Corruption and breaking rules is present. According to the October 30th article published by Washington Post, is Bolivia's democracy in danger? Here's what's behind the disputed presidential election. Mr. Evo Morales ran for his fourth term, despite the fact that there was a limit of 2 terms only. And the highest score in the entire Bolivia supported him. This shows that there is room for corruption in some democratic countries, such as Bolivia, as the highest score clearly broke a rule by supporting him. In conclusion, democracy is imperative. And that democracy may be really messed up right now, but there's still hope. And there's still time to bring back the democracy that I once prided myself for living in a country with. According to the Washington Post article published on October 15th, the democratic success story that no one is talking about, a no-nonsense person named Kais Saeed beat the favorite Nabil Karoui, who recently got released from jail in the Tunisian elections. Now, what this proves is that democracy can still be pure and can still be fair, as the favorite for the election was just released from prison. How would one want a leader who was just released from prison a week before the elections? And Kais Saeed ended up winning, who was no nonsense and I believe can exploit the best interests of Tunisia. There is still time to improve democracy. And I believe that if the people vote for the right leaders and and discrimination can be stopped, and social media companies like Facebook seize on ties with political advertising just like Twitter did, then there's still hope for democracy. Thank you.
Are you time judging or are you
Oh, no, but I mean, those papers are finished.
No. I'm just gonna
So we're doing so.
classroom, so I can just like guide everybody and everything. How would I like did it and you did it done right now?
Yeah.
No, I just wrote, I just like made a little outline on the back, but I actually actual comments.
You're free driving. Yeah. I'm not sure. The atomic rising